This video will show you how to replace the rear brake flex hose on a Pontiac Grand Prix. This will be located behind your rear wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done that, we're going to remove all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts and remove the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. We're paying attention to the caliper next, more specifically, the bleeder screw. Before we open our bleeder screw, we need to make sure we have a collection receptacle. You can use a pan or you can use something like I have here. I'm going to be recycling all my fluid properly. As far as the bleeder screw, if you happen to have a bleeder screw cover on there, go ahead and remove it. It's just a small rubber cover. After a quick inspection, we can set that aside and we'll continue on to the 10mm headed bleeder screw. We're going to break this free. I want to make sure I can see a steady trickle of fluid coming out. Like I mentioned, I do want to make sure I have my collection receptacle handy. I do see fluid. I'm going to install my apparatus. Now at this point, I have to make my way up inside the passenger compartment. I'm going to press the brake pedal down to the floor and hold it there with something such as a pry bar. That's going to help restrict brake fluid from making its way down through the system while we continue on. After doing that, I'm back at the caliper. I'm going to close my bleeder screw. We will be reopening this, so I'm just lightly tightening it. We'll continue on to our banjo bolts next. As far as our banjo bolts, we'll be using an 11mm. When you do remove this, there will be fluid that comes out of the caliper. Fluid shouldn't come out of the hose until we start disconnecting the other end. Either way, we have our collection receptacle under this area. Now that we have that separated, we'll follow the flex hose up towards the body of the vehicle. On the other side of this bracket, we have to disconnect our steel brake line. So we're looking back here, and I can see my brake line leading into the flex hose. I have a 13mm headed brake line fitting. I'm going to start loosening that by turning it counterclockwise. As I start loosening it, you're going to find that fluid will make its way out of the other end of the flex hose. Make sure you have your collection receptacle under this entire area. Now it feels as though my line did break free. We'll wiggle that out of place. Of course, a quick inspection of that brake line and fitting. I do want to make sure I clean this up a little bit prior to installation, but for now, let's continue on with the removal of the flex hose. We're moving along to removing the flex hose and bracket together. There's one 10mm bolt holding this in place to the body of the vehicle. Let's go ahead and remove that and the flex hose with the bracket. Let's remove the flex hose from the vehicle. Now, prior to installing our brand new part, of course, we want to make sure we clean and inspect our mounting area. The first place I like to start is up at the body of the vehicle where my mounting bolts would be. Then I'll move down to my line and, of course, clean and inspect the caliper port. As far as the body of the vehicle, I'll be using a wire brush. This looks good. Let's move along to the brake line and brake line fitting. Just wipe off that brake fluid. We'll use a wire brush. Close inspection. Doesn't look rotted or weak. Let's continue on to that caliper. When looking at the caliper, we're looking at the port where the banjo bolt and flex hose would be. Give it a thorough inspection. On my application, I can see one of my gaskets is still stuck in place. You need to make sure you remove it. Never double gasket something like this. You will get a brake fluid leak, and that can be dangerous. Of course, we'll dispose of that properly. Now I'm going to carefully clean the port. I'm not using any type of detergent. I don't want anything making its way inside of the caliper, which could contaminate the brake fluid. This looks good. All right, so now we can get ready to install the brand new rear brake flex hose. We're starting with the end that the brake line goes into, and we have the bracket. Now when we install this, we're starting with the brake line fitting directly into our brand new brake hose. I like to start this in by hand. Now that I have it started in by hand, I'm going to get the bracket in place. We'll make sure the bracket is fully secured, and then we can tighten that line. The bracket is secured, so now it's time for the brake line fitting, 13 millimeter for this. I have it bottomed out with my opened end wrench. Now I'm just going to use my line wrench. We'll make sure it's secure. This feels good. Let's make our way down towards the caliper next. Now, before we can install that flex hose onto the caliper, we're having a close look at our banjo bolt. Double check to make sure you've removed any pre-existing gaskets from your banjo bolt. Never reuse an old gasket and never double gasket. Once you've thoroughly cleaned and inspected it, install one of the brand new gaskets onto your banjo bolt. So we'll bring our banjo bolt over, and now we can pay attention to the end of the flex hose. When we look at this, we need to make sure we have it in the proper orientation. I can see I have this notched area. That's where the banjo bolt is going to slide through. We can see I have my gasket on there. On the other side of that flex hose, the other brand new gasket. Now we have a brand new gasket on each side of the brake flex hose. Let's get this in place on the caliper. Now that I have this lightly bottomed out, I'm going to be torquing it to 25 foot-pounds. Of course, we'll double check to make sure that the flex hose is properly secured in place to the caliper. It should not move around in any way. Now, continuing on, it's time for a gravity bleed. To do that, we need to make our way inside the passenger compartment and remove the brake pedal depressor. Once I do not have pressure on the brake pedal, I'm back out here at my bleeder screw. I'll have my collection receptacle under this area. I'm going to open the bleeder screw and then wait until I see a steady trickle of fluid making its way out of the area with no air bubbles. Now, as I look at this, I can tell that I only have fluid making its way out of here. So at this point, I can go ahead and close that bleeder screw. Now, continuing on, I'm back inside the passenger compartment. I'm going to pump up the brake pedal until it feels firm. Now, if you did find that the brake pedal felt soft and squishy or sank to the floor, you need to continue on with the manual brake bleed, which I'll show you at the end of this video. Assuming it does feel good, go ahead and clean any mess so you can double check for leaks and reinstall your bleeder screw cover. Let's reinstall our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 19 millimeter lug nuts. Once you have them all started on, snug them up. We'll get the wheel back on the ground and then torque each lug nut to 100 foot-pounds. Now that I have the wheel back on the ground, I'm going to be torquing each one of my lug nuts to that 100 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Take hold of the cap, turn it counterclockwise to remove it. A quick inspection. Looking at the cap, you can see exactly what type of fluid we will have to use. .3 brake fluid. We'll set that aside. Let's top it off with our brand new .3 or .4 brake fluid. We're going all the way up to the maximum line here. That looks good. The master cylinder is located under the hood, but you'll also have to make your way behind each one of your 4 wheels. Just a quick note about doing this job, you will want to have some clean .3 brake fluid and some parts cleaner. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. Now something that I want to mention real quick is we will have to bleed each one of our brakes located behind the wheels, so make sure you're in a safe area to do so. Once we've done that, let's start under the hood at the master cylinder. As far as the master cylinder is concerned, before we remove the cap, let's go ahead and clean around the area. I'm just going to use a clean rag for this, a quick wipe. We just want to make sure nothing makes its way inside the braking system. Take hold of the cap, turn it counterclockwise to remove it. A quick inspection. Looking at the cap, you can see exactly what type of fluid we will have to use. .3 brake fluid. We'll set that aside. Continuing on, we want to remove as much fluid from inside of the master cylinder reservoir as possible. Use a fluid extraction device. These can come in all different shapes and sizes. This is the one I'll be using. After removing all fluid from inside of the master cylinder reservoir, let's top it off with our brand new .3 or .4 brake fluid. We're going all the way up to the maximum line here. That looks good. Obviously, we will have to continuously top this off. This looks good for now. Let's continue on along the right rear wheel. So now when we bleed the brakes, of course we have all the wheels off of the vehicle. So we're starting the brake bleed at the passenger side rear or the right rear. Once we've completed that, we're going to have to go to the left front caliper, the driver's side front. Continuing on from there, of course, we need to make sure that we top off the master cylinder. We can never run it dry. After we've topped off that master cylinder, we're going to the driver's side rear or the left rear, and then we'll be finishing at the right front or the passenger side front. Completing all of that, it's time to top off the master cylinder at the end one last time. We're at the passenger side rear caliper. This is where we're starting the brake bleeding process. If you have a bleeder screw cover, go ahead and remove that. Now we will have to open up our bleeder screw. To bleed the brakes, this is going to be easiest if you have a second person inside of the vehicle. That person inside the vehicle is going to pump the brake pedal approximately 3 to 5 times slowly and hold it on the last pump. They're going to let me know. At that point, I'm going to carefully open up my bleeder screw with a collection receptacle in this area. I'm going to be watching the fluid making its way out of the system. We have to repeat this process until we see only clean brake fluid making its way out. Go ahead and pump that brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. You can release, thank you. Now, as you saw, I had only clean brake fluid making its way out of the hose. There was a couple small air bubbles, but that's just what gets trapped in this particular hose. I feel confident that I fully bled this brake. I have only clean brake fluid making its way out. At this point, I'm going to make sure I remove my tools, clean any mess, and we'll continue on to the next wheel. Now that we bled the passenger side rear, let's make our way to the driver's side front caliper. So we're at the driver's side front caliper. If you have a bleeder screw cover, go ahead and remove that. Now we're going to bleed this brake in the same way. Of course, I do have my 10mm wrench for my bleeder screw, and I also have my collection receptacle. Go ahead and pump up that brake pedal, please. Go ahead and pump. Go ahead and pump. All right, you can release. Now, as you saw, I had only clean brake fluid making its way out through the caliper, and definitely no air bubbles. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my mess here, and we'll make our way to the master cylinder next. Let's top it off with our brand new .3 or .4 brake fluid. Now that I've topped off the master cylinder after the first two calipers, you're going to go to the driver's side rear caliper. Bleed that caliper the same way that you already saw me bleed the passenger side rear. After cleaning that, go to the passenger side front. Bleed the front caliper the same way you saw me bleed the driver's side front caliper. After completing both of those, everything's nice and clean. You're making your way back up to the master cylinder to top it off one last time.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.